How do we even begin to process the events that unfolded in the NASCAR world this past weekend? Have you ever been watching a race and suddenly sensed that something monumental was about to occur? As if the tension was palpable, the atmosphere felt unusual, and then suddenly, everything transforms within mere seconds. That is precisely the type of moment we just experienced. Honestly, this is the kind of content that reminds us why we adore this sport, while also highlighting why it can be incredibly unforgiving. Here is the reality. Today, we are not discussing just a single narrative. 3 significant developments have emerged from this race weekend, and each carries its own unique impact. One of these could carry substantial implications moving forward. Another reveals the emotional toll drivers endure, while the final one places this entire scenario into historical context in a manner that might genuinely surprise you. Yes, there is much to analyze here, but before we dive in, if you are a genuine NASCAR enthusiast who enjoys discussing the sport in this way, please go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe. This channel is in its early stages. We are working toward growing our community, and it is all about authentic fans engaging in authentic NASCAR conversations. Everything begins with Bubba Wallace, and unfortunately, not in a positive manner. During the competition at Talladega Superspeedway, we witnessed one of those incidents that every NASCAR supporter immediately identifies. The infamous Big One. This was an enormous 26-vehicle collision that entirely altered the trajectory of the race. Wallace was competing near the front when circumstances deteriorated. There was contact during a drafting push, the type we frequently observe at superspeedways. However, this instance escalated significantly. He gets spun, collides with the exterior wall, and from that point, pure chaos ensues. Vehicles piling up, no escape routes, smoke engulfing the track. We are discussing prominent names becoming entangled in this incident. Competitors such as Tyler Reddick, Denny Hamlin, Kyle Busch, Joey Logano, and Kyle Larson were all participants, and it did not conclude there. The complete roster of vehicles involved in this incident is staggering. Numbers 23, 56, 78, 11, 12, 19, 21, 22, 23, 24, 33, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 51, 54, 66, 71, 77, 88, 97. That represents more than 50% of the field eliminated within seconds. Now, here is where matters become serious. NASCAR has formally initiated an official investigation into this incident. They are not simply dismissing this as typical Talladega chaos. They are thoroughly examining everything: data, radio communications, in-car footage, attempting to determine precisely what transpired during that push sequence. Elements such as throttle application, vehicle positioning, driver intent, all of it is currently under intense scrutiny. Depending on their findings, we could be facing outcomes ranging from no penalty whatsoever all the way to fines, points deductions, or even a suspension. That is monumental. Because let us be honest, superspeedway racing is perpetually aggressive. Everyone is clustered together, inches separating them, pushing at nearly 200 miles per hour. One minor error can trigger catastrophe. Most of the time, we label it a racing incident. That is precisely how Wallace perceives it. After exiting the infield care center, he essentially expressed what numerous drivers believe. You are operating on the edge every single lap at Talladega. One push at an incorrect angle and everything spirals out of control. He did not assign blame to anyone, did not point fingers, but you could sense the frustration present. He understands how massive these crashes can become, and he knows nobody desires to be the focal point of such an event. But then we transition into the second segment of this narrative, and honestly, this is where you truly experience it from a supporter's viewpoint. Wallace spoke with Jamie Little following the collision, and you could detect it in his tone, pure, unfiltered disappointment. This marked already his second did not finish of the season, and that is the type of occurrence that silently undermines your momentum. He discussed how they had nothing to demonstrate from stage one, how aggravating the situation is, and how significantly it impacts the team, particularly with 23xi Racing and their sponsor Xfinity. However, what truly stood out was this: he accepted accountability. He stated they must determine how to be pushed more effectively, how to manage those scenarios more cleanly, especially with their Toyota vehicles. That is a driver claiming ownership of the moment, even amidst a chaotic circumstance. And here is why this holds even greater significance. Because entering this race, Wallace was actually experiencing a remarkably strong beginning to the season. Top 10 results in 4 of the initial 5 competitions. P11 at COTA, P11 at Bristol, then a robust P5 at Kansas. He was constructing something meaningful. Simultaneously, he is observing his teammate Tyler Reddick go out there and secure 5 victories already this year. Wallace even addressed that with Steve Letarte, stating, "There is no jealousy. It is more like, man, when is it our turn? That is real. That is honest." And then an incident like this occurs, and it simply sets you back once more. Now let us expand our view to the third component of this story, because this one places everything into proper perspective. Everyone began posing the identical question following the wreck. Was this the most massive crash Talladega has ever witnessed? And the answer is not exactly. With 26 vehicles involved, this wreck is undoubtedly among the largest in NASCAR Cup Series history at Talladega. There is no question about that. However, it actually falls slightly short of the record that continues to belong to the 28-vehicle pileup during the October 2024 playoff event. Prior to that, you had the 2003 Aaron's 499 with 27 vehicles, which for years was regarded as the standard. So yes, this one joins the list, but it does not surpass it. Still, the manner in which it unfolded, classic Talladega, lap 116, push executed incorrectly, Wallace gets spun, smoke envelops the track, competitors in the rear cannot perceive anything. And at those velocities, there is simply no opportunity to react. You hear communications on the radio stating, "It is a parking lot back here." And that essentially summarizes it all. And this is why Talladega remains perpetually at the heart of these moments. Nearly 200 mph, tightly packed drafting groups, zero tolerance for error, one poorly timed push, one obstructed lane, one minor mistake, and suddenly half the field is eliminated. That is the reality of superspeedway competition. So when you combine all of these elements, the enormous wreck, the potential NASCAR penalty, the emotional consequences for Wallace, and the historical backdrop, this was not merely another collision. This is the type of moment that can alter an entire season. If NASCAR chooses to take action, that could transform Wallace's complete trajectory this year. Even without a penalty, the DNF damages the standings, particularly this early when consistency holds such importance heading toward the playoffs. And as supporters, we remain observing this develop in real time, understanding that at Talladega, this can recur at any moment. That is what makes it thrilling. That is what makes it stressful. And honestly, that is what makes NASCAR NASCAR. Now, I want to hear from you. Do you believe this was simply a racing incident, or should NASCAR actually impose a penalty on Bubba Wallace for this? Share your thoughts in the comments. Let us discuss it. And honestly, here is my perspective as a fan who watches this every single week. I do not believe Bubba Wallace should be suspended for this. I truly do not. This appeared like classic superspeedway racing to me. At Talladega, you are constantly operating on the edge, and when you are pushing at those speeds, it requires almost nothing for circumstances to go awry. One slight angle, one poorly timed push, and the entire field pays the consequence. That is exactly what this felt like. Now, I do comprehend why NASCAR is reviewing it. When you have 26 vehicles damaged, you must examine everything. You must check the data, the throttle input, the radio communications, all of it. That is their responsibility, especially when safety is involved. But from what we observed, this did not appear intentional, and it did not appear reckless beyond what we typically witness at these tracks. If anything, this simply demonstrates how hazardous and unpredictable Talladega remains. Even with all the safety enhancements, and I will mention this as well, this truly harms Wallace at the worst conceivable moment. He was building momentum this season. He was consistent. He was competing near the front more frequently, and it seemed like he was approaching that next level, particularly compared to Tyler Reddick, who has been securing victories. And then, a DNF like this simply resets everything. That is the aspect that frustrates me the most as a supporter. Not even the crash itself, but what it removes from a driver who is actually assembling a strong performance this year. And when it comes to the historical aspect of it, this is precisely why Talladega never loses its reputation. Even when it is not the most massive crash ever, it still feels like one of those moments you are going to recall. 26 vehicles is not a record, but it is still enormous, and it demonstrates that the next big one is always just one error away. So yes, for me this is a racing incident, a brutal one, but still a racing incident. No suspension, just learn from it, move forward, and prepare for the next one. But I truly want to know what you think. And if you appreciated this analysis, go ahead and like the video, subscribe to our channel. We are a new community working to grow, and if you are into genuine, honest NASCAR discussion like this, you are going to want to be part of this.